Hello, I'm Mario Toneguzzi, and I'm taking care of business. Joining me today is Mike Holden, Vice President of Policy and Chief Economist with the Business Council of Alberta. Thanks, Michael, for joining us today.
Thank you.
Let's talk about Alberta labor numbers. Stats Canada came out with its latest data for March here on Friday, the labor force survey. It showed that Alberta gained 7,200 jobs in March, and its unemployment rate dipped down to 6.5% from 6.8% the previous month. What's happening in the province these days in terms of the labor market, Mike?
Well, we're seeing the province come closer and closer to what we might consider to be full recovery. And so, the number of jobs we see in Alberta is already above where it was pre-pandemic. We're still lagging a little bit in terms of the employment rate. So not as many people as a proportion of the working age population are working. And interestingly, what we're seeing here, so 7,200 jobs is not a huge number. It's what I'd consider to be modest growth. And what we're seeing, if you sort of dig into the numbers a little bit deeper, is that this, for working age Albertans and for young Albertans, the recovery has been much stronger. But we're starting to see this growing trend or concern where it's a lot of older workers are either not coming back into the workforce, or they're not having a harder time finding work than they had in the past. And so that's why we see, a 6.5% unemployment rate. That's it's steadily improving. It's still higher than it is in a lot of other provinces. And so that's one of the reasons why that is.
Tell me a little bit about that. I'm curious about the unemployment rate. I think Canada's was at a record low here. I think it was around 5.3%. Why is Alberta's rate, and in the cities of Calgary and Edmonton, the highest in the country?
Well, there are a few reasons for this, I think. One of them is that Alberta was hit a lot harder during the pandemic and even when that happened, and we had that little bout of negative oil prices, even at that point, we had a pretty weak performance over the last 4 or 5 years prior to that. And so we had weak labor market conditions coming in, got hit extra hard, recovered pretty well, but we still haven't quite recovered to the same levels we were before. That's one of the reasons. Another one is that Albertans on average tend to be a lot more focused in the labor market than other Canadians. So our participation rate on average is higher, and you don't count as unemployed unless you're actually looking for work. And Albertans typically are more active at looking for work. And we have a younger population, which means that we have more people as a proportion of the population in that sort of core working age where everybody is looking for a job. And so those are part of the reasons why we're not seeing the unemployment rate fall down as quickly as we are elsewhere in the country.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about jobs. I know one of the interesting things over the last year that oil prices have grown steadily and been elevated compared to what they were before, but we haven't seen that job creation in the oil patch. I want you to talk a little bit about the reasons why, but also talk a little bit, Mike, about how even with an elevated oil price, it does have job creation effects in other industries, does it not?
Yeah, no, those are absolutely both true. And so, what we've seen over the last 5 or 6 years since the last oil price crash is that the Alberta industry has really tightened up. It's become a lot more competitive. It's become a lot more efficient, and has grown to automate a lot more, which means that you can produce a lot more with a smaller workforce than you had in the past. So now we're in a situation where oil prices are high, and production is up, and profits are up for companies, but they're not necessarily bringing on as many workers as they might have done in the past, because they're running tighter ships, which means that when oil prices fall back down again, they're a lot more resilient on the negative side than they had been in the past. And then on top of that, we're not seeing a lot of new greenfield type of investment capital spending activity in the oil patch. We're not increasing production in building ambitious new sites, and so there's a bit of a drag on that end of it, on the construction side as well. But like you said, high oil prices do impact the provincial economy in a positive way. They do, I mean, they will raise wages, in the sector, and create additional revenue for the provincial government, which means we have more money to be able to spend. We can, we saw when the budget came out that the balance was far better than we thought it was going to be about a year ago.
Yeah.
And so these things will all help fuel economic growth, put more money in the hands of Albertans, and create jobs elsewhere in the economy.
Yeah, what do you think we can expect for the next few months in the province when it comes to the labor market?
Well, we're still looking at full recovery in some areas. Still hasn't happened. So if you just look at this last month and the last couple of months as a trend, so it's employment in the goods sector has been relatively flat. We saw a bit of a drop this past month. Services sector has done typically very well. A lot of the jobs that we saw created in March, about 18,000 of them were in wholesale and retail trade, which is a huge spike. And and meanwhile, that's been offset by some losses in some of our traditional strength areas, such as finance, professional services, and transportation and logistics have been down over the last couple of months. So we're looking to see those trends level out. I think that decline is there's not a good reason for it. So we're expecting to see that level out. And then we're still, the accommodation food services sector added about 4,000 to 5,000 jobs last month, but it's still 20,000 jobs short of where it was pre-pandemic. And so there's still a fair bit of slack there to be picked up. And so we're looking to see that slack fill in as time passes.
All right, super. Thanks, Mike, for joining us today.
No problem. Thank you.
All right, that was Michael Holden, who is Vice President, Policy and Chief Economist with the Business Council of Alberta. I'm Mario Toneguzzi. This has been Taking Care of Business. Thanks for joining us today.